The bullet that grazed Clara Thornton's shoulder sent her tumbling from her horse into the red dirt of Arizona territory, and as she lay there gasping, watching the outlaws rifle through her saddlebags and ride off with everything she owned, she knew her father's dying wish for her to reach California would die with her in this God-forsaken stretch of desert unless someone with mercy in their heart happened along this desolate trail. The sun beat down mercilessly on the parched earth, and Clara pressed her hand against the wound, feeling the warm blood seep between her fingers. Her horse had bolted, spooked by the gunfire, and now she was alone with nothing but the clothes on her back and a bullet wound that burned like hellfire. The year was 1877, and women did not travel alone through Arizona territory for good reason. She had learned that lesson too late. Her vision swam as she tried to push herself upright. The outlaws had been ruthless, taking not only her money but her father's pocket watch, the last thing she had to remember him by. They had laughed as they rode away, leaving her for the vultures. Clara had always been strong, had always found a way to survive, but now, bleeding and alone in the middle of nowhere, she wondered if her stubbornness had finally caught up with her. The sound of hoofbeats made her heart leap with both hope and fear. She could not run, could barely move. If it was the outlaws returning, she was finished. If it was someone else, she could only pray they had more mercy than the men who had shot her. A rider emerged from the heat shimmer on the horizon, leading a pack horse behind him. As he drew closer, Clara could make out the details. A tall man in his mid-20s, perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that curled slightly beneath his worn hat. His shirt was dusty from travel, and a gun belt sat low on his hips. But it was his eyes that caught her attention as he dismounted, eyes the color of amber that held both wariness and concern. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and steady as he knelt beside her. "What happened here?" "Outlaws?" Clara managed to say, her throat dry as sand. "They took everything, shot me and left me to die." The cowboy's jaw tightened, and he gently moved her hand away from the wound to examine it. His touch was surprisingly gentle for such rough-looking hands. "Bullet grazed you. You are lucky it did not go deeper, but we need to get you cleaned up and bandaged before infection sets in." "I cannot pay you," Clara whispered, shame flooding through her even as gratitude welled up in her chest. "They took everything I had, my money, my father's watch, everything I need to get to California." The cowboy looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. It was not pity exactly, but understanding, as if he knew what it meant to have nothing. "I am not asking for payment, ma'am. Out here, we help each other, or we all die. That is just the way of things." He lifted her carefully, and Clara bit back a cry of pain as he carried her to the shade of a scrubby mesquite tree. From his saddlebags, he pulled out a canteen and a clean cloth, and set about cleaning her wound with the efficiency that spoke of experience. "You have done this before," Clara observed, trying to focus on something other than the pain. "I have patched up my share of bullet wounds, Summerer," he admitted. "Been on the receiving end of a few myself. My name is James Cordell. Most folks call me Cord." "Clara Thornton," she replied, studying his face as he worked. There was something solid about him, something trustworthy in the careful way he tended to her injury. "Where are you headed?" "Was riding toward Tucson to pick up supplies for my ranch," Cord said, tying off the bandage he had fashioned from strips of clean cloth. "But that can wait. You need proper care, and you will need help getting wherever you are going." "I told you I cannot pay you back," Clara said, her voice breaking slightly. The reality of her situation was sinking in. She had nothing. Her father had died 3 months ago in Texas, leaving her with just enough money to make it to her aunt in California. Now that money was gone, stolen by men who would probably drink it away in some saloon, quietly. The world has enough taking in quietly. The world has enough taking in it. Maybe what we need is more giving. You help someone else when you can, and we will call it even. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, and she blinked them back stubbornly. She had cried enough over the past 3 months, cried herself dry over her father's slow, painful death from consumption. She would not cry now, not in front of this stranger who was showing her more kindness than she had seen in a long time. "That is a strange bargain," she finally said. "Maybe," Cord agreed, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "But it is the only one I am offering." He helped her drink from his canteen, and the water was like liquid heaven on her parched throat. When she had drunk her fill, he gave her a piece of jerky from his provisions and sat beside her in the shade, his own hat tilted low over his eyes as he surveyed the landscape. "Those outlaws, they head north or south?" he asked after a while. "North, I think. Everything happened so fast." Cord nodded slowly. "Could be the Dalton gang. They have been working this territory for the past few months. Vicious men, every one of them." "Do you think you could track them?" Clara asked, then immediately felt foolish. "I'm sorry. That was presumptuous of me. You have already done more than enough." "I could track them," Cord said carefully. "But I would not catch up to them before nightfall, and I would not leave you out here alone. Your safety matters more than your father's watch, even if it holds sentimental value." The fact that he understood what that watch meant to her without her having to explain touched something deep in Clara's chest. She had been alone for so long, first caring for her dying father, then making the desperate journey west with nothing but hope to sustain her. To have someone actually care about her well-being, even a stranger, felt like a balm to her wounded soul. "What will I do?" she asked quietly, more to herself than to him. "First, we get you to Tucson," Cord said decisively. "My ranch is about 40 miles southwest of there, in good cattle country. You can rest there while you figure out your next move. I could use some help around the place anyway. My sister Rachel usually manages the household, but she just had a baby and could use an extra pair of hands." "You would hire me, even though I have no way to reach California now?" "California will still be there in a few months," Cord said practically. "And yes, I would hire you. You would earn your keep, earn some money to replace what was stolen, and when you are ready, I will make sure you have enough to reach your aunt safely." It was more generosity than Clara knew how to accept, but she also knew she had no other choice. She could not stay out here in the desert, and she could not walk to Tucson with a bullet wound in her shoulder. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. "Thank you," she said simply, putting all the gratitude she felt into those 2 words. Cord nodded and stood, brushing the dust from his pants. "We should get moving. I want to make it to the way station before dark. There is a decent woman there who runs the place, and she will have a proper bed for you to sleep in." He helped Clara to her feet, steadying her when she swayed slightly. The blood loss had made her weak, and she leaned against him more than she wanted to admit. But Cord did not seem to mind. He simply kept his arm around her waist and guided her to his horse. "Can you ride?" he asked. "I can manage," Clara said, though she was not entirely sure that was true. Cord lifted her onto his horse with surprising ease, then swung up behind her. His arms came around her to hold the reins, and Clara found herself enclosed in his presence, aware of his warmth at her back, the steady rhythm of his breathing. For a while, the desert stretching out endlessly around them. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Despite the pain in her shoulder and the uncertainty of her future, Clara found herself appreciating the stark beauty of the landscape. This was a harsh land, unforgiving to the weak, but there was something honest about it, something that appealed to her. "Tell me about your ranch," she said after a while, needing to hear a human voice to keep her mind off the throbbing pain. "It is not much yet," Cord admitted. "About 200 acres, good grazing land near the Santa Cruz River. I have been building it up for the past 4 years, since I was 23. Started with nothing but a plot of land and a dream. Now I've got about 50 head of cattle, a small house, a barn, and enough debt to keep me working for the next decade." There was no bitterness in his voice, just a matter-of-fact acceptance of his situation. Clara respected that. She knew what it was like to work hard for little reward, to keep pushing forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. "Your sister lives with you?" Clara asked. "Rachel and her husband Tom have a cabin on the property. He works the ranch with me. Good man, Tom. A little rough around the edges, but he loves my sister something fierce, and that is what matters." "And your parents?" Cord was quiet for a moment, and Clara wondered if she had overstepped. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of old grief. "They died when I was 19. Fever took them both within a week of each other. Rachel was only 14. I have been looking after her ever since, though she would probably tell you she has been looking after me just as much." "I am sorry," Clara said softly. "I lost my mother when I was 12. Childbirth. The baby died too. After that, it was just me and my father." "And now?" Cord asked gently. "Now it is just me," Clara said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "My father died of consumption 3 months ago in San Antonio. He made me promise to go to California to his sister. He said she would take care of me, help me start a new life. So I used what little money we had and started west." "You are braver than you give yourself credit for," Cord said. "Not many women would attempt that journey alone." "I am not brave," Clara replied. "I am just stubborn. There is a difference." Cord chuckled, and Clara felt the rumble of it against her back. Sometimes stubbornness is just another name for courage. The way station appeared on the horizon just as the sun was setting, a squat adobe building with a corral and a small barn. Smoke rose from the chimney, and lamplight glowed in the windows. To Clara, it looked like paradise. A woman emerged from the building as they rode up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Cord Cordell," she called out. "I did not expect to see you until tomorrow. And who is this you have got with you?" "Evening, Mrs. Murphy," Cord said, dismounting and then carefully helping Clara down. "This is Miss Clara Thornton. She ran into some trouble on the trail. Outlaws." Mrs. Murphy's expression immediately shifted from curiosity to concern. She hurried forward and took Clara's good arm. "You poor dear, come inside at once. Cord, you see to the horses. I will take care of this young lady." Clara found herself swept into the way station and deposited in a comfortable chair near the fireplace. Mrs. Murphy brought her water, then soup, then bread, all while firing questions about what had happened. When Clara explained about the outlaws, Mrs. Murphy's face darkened. "Those Dalton boys have been a plague on this territory," she said angrily. "The law cannot seem to catch them, and honest folks suffer for it. I am just glad Cord found you when he did. You could have died out there." "I know," Clara said quietly. "I owe him my life." "Cord is a good man," Mrs. Murphy said, her voice warming. "Known him since he was a boy. His father used to stop here on cattle drives. When Thomas and Mary died, Cord brought Rachel here, worked for me for a summer to earn enough money to buy supplies for their first winter. He was just 19, but he had the determination of a man twice his age. Never complained, never gave up. Now look at him, with his own ranch and everything." Clara listened, filing away these pieces of information about the man who had saved her. She found herself wanting to know more about him, to understand what made him the kind of person who would help a stranger without expecting anything in return. Cord came in a few minutes later, having settled the horses. Mrs. Murphy immediately set about feeding him as well, and Clara watched as he ate with the efficient movements of someone used to hard work and long days. He caught her eye and smiled, and Clara felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. "You have got more color in your cheeks," he observed. "That is good." "Mrs. Murphy has been taking excellent care of me," Clara said. "That is what I do," Mrs. Murphy said briskly. "Now, Miss Thornton, you will take my bed tonight. I will not hear any arguments. You need proper rest, and that shoulder needs to stay clean. Cord, you can have the spare room." "I appreciate it, Mrs. Murphy," Cord said. After they had finished eating, Mrs. Murphy showed Clara to her room, a small but clean space with a real bed covered in quilts. It was the most comfortable thing Clara had seen in weeks, and she nearly wept at the sight of it. "You get some rest now," Mrs. Murphy said kindly. Things will look better in the morning. They always do. Clara wanted to believe her, but as she lay in the darkness, her shoulder aching despite the laudanum Mrs. Murphy had given her, she could not help but think about how drastically her life had changed in just one day. This morning she had been on her way to California, full of hope for a new beginning. Tonight she was injured, penniless, and dependent on the charity of strangers. But then she thought about Cord's words, "Then pay me forward with your heart." It was such an unusual thing to say, so different from the transactional nature of most human interactions. He had not wanted her money or her gratitude. He had simply wanted her to be kind to others in turn. It was a philosophy that spoke of a generous spirit, of someone who understood that the world needed more compassion. Clara made a decision then, lying in that borrowed bed in a way station in the middle of Arizona territory. She would take Cord up on his offer. She would work on his ranch, earn her keep, and save enough money to reach California. But more than that, she would learn from his example. She would pay forward the kindness he had shown her, and maybe in doing so, she would find a way to heal the grief that had been her constant companion for the past 3 months. The next morning they set out for Tucson. Clara's shoulder was stiff and sore, but the rest had done her good. She felt stronger, more capable of facing whatever came next. Cord had procured a gentle mare for Mrs. Murphy's stable, insisting that Clara needed her own mount and that he would settle the cost later. Clara protested, but Cord had simply given her a look that brooked no argument. "You cannot ride double all the way to the ranch," he said practically. "Besides, every ranch hand needs their own horse. Consider it part of your employment." They rode through the desert as the sun climbed higher, and Cord pointed out various landmarks and told her about the territory. He spoke about the Apache who had lived on this land long before white settlers arrived, and the tensions that still simmered between the tribes and the newcomers. He talked about the challenges of ranching in such an unforgiving climate, the constant battle against drought and predators, and the sheer isolation of frontier life. Clara listened, fascinated by his knowledge and his obvious love for this harsh land. She asked questions, and Cord answered them patiently, seeming to enjoy having someone to talk to. She learned that he read books whenever he could get his hands on them, that he had taught himself basic veterinary skills to care for his cattle, and that his dream was to build his ranch into something substantial enough to pass on to future generations. "Do you want children?" Clara asked, then blushed, realizing how forward the question was. "I am sorry, that was too personal." But Cord did not seem offended. "Someday," he said thoughtfully, "when I find the right woman, someone strong enough to handle ranch life, someone who's not afraid of hard work, and someone who wants to build something lasting, not just looking for an easy life." "That seems like a tall order," Clara said, her lips quirking in a small smile. "Maybe," Cord agreed, "but I would rather wait for the right person than settle for the wrong one. My parents had something special. They loved each other deeply, respected each other, and worked side by side to build a life together. I want that for myself." Clara felt a pang of longing at his words. She had never really thought about marriage before, had been too busy caring for her father and trying to survive. But now, listening to Cord talk about building a life with someone, about partnership and mutual respect, she found herself wanting those things too. They reached Tucson by late afternoon, and Clara was struck by the bustling activity of the town. It was larger than she had expected, with adobe buildings lining dusty streets and a mix of Mexicans, Americans, and Apache moving about their business. Cord led her to a general store, where he purchased supplies for the ranch and a few items for Clara: a new dress, a sturdy pair of boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to protect her from the sun. "I cannot accept these," Clara protested, even as she ran her fingers over the soft fabric of the dress. "You cannot work on a ranch in a torn, blood-stained dress," Cord said reasonably. "Consider it an advance on your wages." He also took her to a doctor who examined her shoulder and pronounced Cord's field dressing adequate. The doctor cleaned the wound more thoroughly and applied a proper bandage, then gave Clara a bottle of medicine to prevent infection. You were lucky, the doctor said. Another few inches, and that bullet would have done serious damage. You have got a good man looking after you. Clara glanced at Cord, who was standing by the window, his hat in his hands. A good man. Yes, she was beginning to realize just how good. They stayed the night in Tucson at a respectable boarding house, with Clara in one room and Cord in another. The proprietress, a stern-looking woman named Mrs. Henderson, made it clear that she ran a decent establishment and would tolerate no impropriety. Clara appreciated her protectiveness, even as she found it slightly amusing. She had no designs on Cord, and he had been nothing but gentlemanly toward her. Or did she? Lying in bed that night, Clara found her thoughts drifting to the cowboy who had saved her life. She thought about his amber eyes, the gentleness of his hands when he had tended her wound, the quiet strength in his voice when he spoke. She thought about the way he had offered to help her without expecting anything in return, the way he had treated her with respect and kindness even though she was a stranger with nothing to offer. Clara shook her head, trying to clear these thoughts. She was being foolish. Cord was her employer, nothing more. Nothing. He had made no indication that he saw her as anything other than someone in need of help, and she had no business developing feelings for a man she had just met, especially when her life was in such disarray. But her heart, it seemed, had other ideas. The next morning they set out for Cord's ranch. The landscape gradually changed as they traveled southwest from Tucson, becoming slightly more green as they approached the Santa Cruz River. Clara could see why Cord had chosen this location. There was water here, precious water, and enough grazing land to support a good-sized herd. The ranch house came into view around midday, a modest structure of adobe and wood with a covered porch and a stone chimney. It was not grand, but it looked solid and well-maintained. Near the house was a barn, a corral with several horses, and a smaller cabin that Clara assumed belonged to Cord's sister and her husband. As they rode up, a woman emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the sun. She was in her early 20s, with the same dark hair as Cord and a pretty face that lit up when she saw her brother. "Cord," she called out, hurrying down the porch steps. Then she noticed Clara and paused, her expression shifting to curiosity. "You brought someone home?" Cord dismounted and pulled his sister into a brief hug. "Rachel, this is Clara Thornton. Clara, my sister Rachel Barrett." Clara dismounted carefully, mindful of her injured shoulder, and smiled at Rachel. "It is a pleasure to meet you." "Likewise," Rachel said, her eyes moving between Clara and Cord with obvious questions. "Though I have to say, Cord, you have some explaining to do. You leave to get supplies and come back with a woman?" "Clara ran into trouble on the trail," Cord explained. "Outlaws. I have hired her to help around the ranch while she recovers and saves up money to continue her journey to California." Rachel's expression immediately softened with sympathy. "Oh, you poor thing. Come inside, please. You must be exhausted. Cord, bring her things in, will you?" Clara found herself ushered into the ranch house, which was simple but comfortable. The main room served as both kitchen and living area with a large fireplace, a sturdy table, and several chairs. Doorways led to what Clara assumed were bedrooms. Everything was clean and well organized, clearly maintained by someone who took pride in their home. "I have stew on the stove," Rachel said, guiding Clara to a chair. "You sit down and rest. Cord told me you were injured?" "My shoulder," Clara said, "but it is healing well." Rachel insisted on examining the bandage, and Clara was struck by the efficiency with which she worked. Clearly, Rachel was used to dealing with injuries, probably from ranch work. When she was satisfied that the wound was properly cared for, Rachel sat down across from Clara and studied her with frank curiosity. "So," Rachel said, "California. That is quite a journey for a woman alone." "I have an aunt there," Clara explained. "My father passed away 3 months ago and I have no other family. He made me promise to go to his sister to start a new life." "I am sorry for your loss," Rachel said sincerely. "I know what it is like to lose parents. Cord and I, we only had each other after our folks died. It makes you appreciate family all the more." A man appeared in the doorway, tall and rangy with sun-weathered skin and a kind face. "Cord's back," he announced, then noticed Clara. "And he has brought a guest." "Tom, this is Clara Thornton," Rachel said. "Clara, my husband, Tom Barrett." Tom nodded politely to Clara, then looked at Cord, who had just come in carrying Clara's few belongings. "Everything go well in Tucson? Got the supplies?" Cord said, "But we need to talk. Clara was robbed by outlaws on the trail, could be the Dalton gang." Tom's expression darkened. "They are getting bolder. Sheriff Johnson is not going to be happy to hear this." "I will ride into town tomorrow and file a report." "Nay," Cord said. "Not that it will do much good. Those outlaws are like ghosts. They strike and disappear before anyone can catch them." Over lunch, Clara learned more about the ranch and the people who worked it. In addition to Cord, Rachel, and Tom, there were 2 other ranch hands, an older man named Hank, who had worked cattle all his life, and a young Mexican man named Miguel, who was saving money to bring his family up from Sonora. It was a small operation, but everyone seemed to work together well, and there was a sense of family among them that Clara found appealing. After lunch, Cord showed Clara to a small room at the back of the house. It had a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the ranch. It was simple, but it was hers, and after weeks of sleeping in boarding houses and on the ground, it felt like a palace. "Thank you," Clara said, turning to face Cord, "for everything. I know I keep saying it, but I truly do not know what would have happened to me if you had not come along." Cord leaned against the door frame, his amber eyes warm. "You would have found a way to survive. You are stronger than you think, Clara Thornton." "I do not feel very strong," Clara admitted. "I feel like everything has been taken from me and I'm just trying to keep my head above water." "That is exactly what strength is," Cord said. "It is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up every time you do." He left her to rest, and Clara sat on the edge of the bed, her thoughts swirling. She had been so focused on getting to California, on fulfilling her father's dying wish, that she had not allowed herself to think about what she actually wanted. But now, in this quiet room with the afternoon sun streaming through the window, she found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The days turned into weeks, and Clara settled into the rhythm of ranch life. Her shoulder healed slowly but steadily, and as it did, she took on more and more responsibilities. She helped Rachel with the cooking and cleaning, tended the vegetable garden behind the house, and learned how to preserve food for the winter months ahead. She mended clothes, fed the chickens, and gradually became an integral part of the household. But it was not just the domestic work that occupied her time. Clara had grown up helping her father with whatever work he could find, and she was not afraid of hard labor. As soon as her shoulder would allow it, she began helping with the ranch work too. She learned how to care for the horses, how to mend fences, and even how to handle cattle, though the large animals still intimidated her. Cord was a patient teacher, showing her the skills she needed without making her feel inadequate. He seemed to understand instinctively when to push her and when to let her figure things out on her own. Clara found herself looking forward to the time they spent working together, whether they were repairing a section of fence or riding out to check on the herd. She learned more about him during those long days of work. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that would catch her by surprise, making her laugh when she least expected it. She learned that he was scrupulously fair, dividing the hardest work equally among everyone and never asking anyone to do something he would not do himself. She learned that he had a temper, though he kept it tightly controlled, and that the only things that truly made him angry were cruelty and injustice. And she learned that she was falling in love with him. It happened gradually, so gradually that Clara did not realize what was happening until it was too late to stop it. It was in the way her heart would lift when she heard his voice in the morning, the way she found herself watching him when he did not know she was looking, the way his rare smiles made her feel warm all over. It was in the quiet conversations they had in the evenings after the work was done, sitting on the porch and watching the sun set over the desert. It was in the way he remembered small things about her, like how she preferred her coffee or that she had a habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. but Clara kept these feelings locked tightly in her heart. Cord had never indicated that he saw her as anything more than an employee, someone he was helping out of the goodness of his heart. He was kind to her, yes, but he was kind to everyone. She had no reason to believe his feelings went any deeper than basic human decency. Rachel, however, was not so easily fooled. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after Clara's arrival, Rachel cornered her in the kitchen while they were preparing dinner. "So," Rachel said casually, peeling potatoes, "how long are you going to pretend you are not head over heels for my brother?" Clara nearly dropped the "at him." "And I see the way he looks at you at him. And I see the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. You two are dancing around each other like nervous colts." "Cord does not look at me any particular way," Clara protested, feeling her cheeks heat. "He is just being kind." "Clara, I have known my brother his entire life," Rachel said, setting down her peeling knife and giving Clara her full attention. "I have never, and I mean never, seen him look at a woman the way he looks at you. He is absolutely smitten even if he is too stubborn to admit it." Clara's heart was pounding. Even if that were true, and I am not saying it is, I have nothing to offer him. I am penniless, homeless, and I was supposed to be on my way to California. I am not exactly prime marriage material. "Do you honestly think Cord cares about any of that?" Rachel asked incredulously. "He is not looking for a woman with money or connections. He is looking for someone real. Someone who understands what it means to work hard and face adversity. Someone exactly like you." "But I am supposed to go to California," Clara said weakly. "My father made me promise." Rachel's expression softened. "Your father wanted you to be safe and happy. Do you think he would want you to keep a promise if it meant walking away from a chance at real happiness? Besides, you could always write to your aunt, explain the situation." Clara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. Could Rachel be right? Did Cord have feelings for her? And if he did, what did that mean for her plans? She had been so focused on getting to California, on honoring her father's last wish, that she had not allowed herself to consider other possibilities. "I am scared," Clara admitted quietly. "What if I am wrong? What if I misread everything and make a fool of myself? Or worse, what if I am right and we try to build something together, but it does not work out? I could not bear to lose someone else I care about." Rachel reached across the table and squeezed Clara's hand. "Life does not come with guarantees. Love is always a risk. But I can tell you this. Cord is the most loyal, steadfast man I know. If he gives you his heart, he will protect it with everything he has. And from what I have seen, you are just as strong and true. You two could build something really special together if you are brave enough to try." That night, Clara lay awake in her room, thinking about Rachel's words. She thought about her father, about his hopes for her future. She thought about California, about the aunt she had never met who was waiting for her. And she thought about Cord, about the life they could potentially build together if she was brave enough to take a chance. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Clara had made a decision. She would stay in Arizona at least for now. She would write to her aunt and explain the situation, and she would see where things went with Cord. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, but for the first time since her father's death, Clara felt like she was choosing her own path rather than simply following orders. The opportunity to act on her decision came sooner than she expected. A few days later, Cord asked her to ride out with him to check on some cattle in the far pasture. It was a beautiful morning, cool and clear, and as they rode side by side across the desert, Clara felt a sense of rightness settle over her. They found the cattle grazing peacefully near a small stream, and Cord dismounted to check on a cow that appeared to be limping. Clara watched as he examined the animal with gentle hands, talking to it in a low, soothing voice. There was something deeply attractive about his competence, his quiet confidence in his own abilities. When he was satisfied that the cow's injury was minor, Cord straightened and smiled at Clara. "All good. Just a stone bruise. It will heal on its own." Clara dismounted and walked to where he stood by the stream. The water burbled over smooth rocks, and cottonwood trees provided dappled shade. It was peaceful, almost idyllic, and Clara felt her courage rising. "Cord," she said, her heart pounding. I need to tell you something. He turned to face her fully, his expression curious. All right? Clara took a deep breath. I have been thinking about California, about my father's wish for me to go there and start a new life. Something flickered in Cord's eyes, something that looked like resignation. I understand. You have been here long enough to save some money. If you are ready to continue your journey, I will make sure you have everything you need. No, Clara said quickly. That is not. I am not saying this right. She paused, gathering her thoughts. What I'm trying to say is that I do not want to go to California. I want to stay here, if you will have me. Cord went very still. Clara, you do not have to feel obligated to stay just because I helped you. That was never the deal. I know that, Clara said, taking a step closer to him. I am not staying out of obligation. I am staying because I want to, because I have found something here that I did not even know I was looking for. What is that? Cord asked, his voice rough. A home, Clara said simply. A place where I belong. People who care about me and people I care about in return. She paused, then added softly, and you. I have found you. For a long moment, Cord just stared at her, his amber eyes searching her face as if trying to determine if she was serious. Then slowly he reached out and cupped her cheek with his hand, his thumb brushing gently across her skin. I have been trying so hard not to fall for you, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I kept telling myself that you were grieving, that you were vulnerable, that you had plans for a different life. I did not want to take advantage of you or make you feel pressured to stay out of some misguided sense of gratitude. And now? Clara asked, leaning into his touch. Now I think I have failed spectacularly at not falling for you, Cord said, a hint of his dry humor creeping into his voice. You have worked your way into my heart, Clara Thornton, and I do not think I could dig you out even if I wanted to, which I do not. Clara felt tears prick her eyes, but these were tears of joy, not sorrow. I am in love with you, she said, the words coming easier than she had expected. I think I have been falling for you since that first day when you told me to pay you forward with my heart. I did not understand what you meant then, but I do now. You were not just talking about kindness to strangers. You were talking about opening yourself up to love, to connection, to the risk of caring about someone. Cord pulled her closer, his other arm wrapping around her waist. I love you too, he said. I love your strength, your courage, your stubbornness. I love the way you throw yourself into everything you do, the way you are not afraid of hard work. I love your laugh and your smile, and the way you bite your lip when you are concentrating. I love everything about you. And then he kissed her, and it was everything Clara had dreamed of and more. His lips were warm and gentle, asking rather than demanding, and Clara responded with all the pent-up emotion she had been holding back for weeks. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer, and felt his arms tighten around her in response. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cord rested his forehead against hers and smiled. So you are staying? I am staying, Clara confirmed, if you want me to. Want you to? Cord laughed. Clara, I would have followed you to California if that was what it took to keep you in my life. Having you choose to stay here, to build a life with me, is more than I ever dared to hope for. They stood there by the stream, holding each other, and Clara felt something settle deep in her soul. This was where she belonged. Not in California with an aunt she had never met, but here in Arizona territory with a man who loved her for exactly who she was. Over the following months, Clara and Cord's relationship deepened and grew. They worked together during the day and talked long into the night, learning everything about each other. Clara told Cord about her childhood, about the struggles she and her father had faced, about the grief of losing her mother and then her father. Cord shared his own stories, about growing up on the frontier, about the responsibility of caring for his younger sister after their parents died, about his dreams for the future. They also faced challenges together, The ranch was a constant source of work and worry. There was a drought that summer that left the grazing land parched and forced them to drive the cattle to more distant pastures. There were predators, both animal and human, that threatened the herd. And there was always the specter of debt, the constant pressure to make the ranch profitable enough to sustain everyone who depended on it. But through it all, Clara and Cord stood side by side, facing each obstacle as a team. Clara discovered reserves of strength she had not known she possessed. She learned how to shoot a rifle to protect the chickens from coyotes. She learned how to deliver a calf when one of the cows had trouble birthing. She learned how to manage the household accounts, stretching every dollar to cover expenses while slowly saving toward paying off the ranch's debts. And she learned what it meant to be part of a real family. Rachel became not just her employer's sister, but a true friend. Someone Clara could confide in and rely on. Tom treated her with the same casual affection he showed his wife, teasing her good-naturedly and always ready to help when she needed it. Even Hank and Miguel, the ranch hands, welcomed her into their circle, respecting her for her hard work and her willingness to learn. One evening in early October, as Clara and Cord sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Cord turned to her with a serious expression. "Clara," he said, taking her hand in his, "I know we have only been together for a few months, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Clara's breath caught in her throat. She had known this question was coming, had hoped for it even, but hearing the actual words still made her heart race. She looked at Cord, at the earnest hope in his amber eyes, and felt such a surge of love that it almost overwhelmed her. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, of course I will marry you." Cord pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, and Clara felt like her heart might burst with happiness. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying at the same time, Cord reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I have been carrying this around for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment," he admitted, opening the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "It is not much, but—" "It is perfect," Clara interrupted, holding out her hand so he could slip the ring onto her finger. And it was perfect. Not because of its value, but because of what it represented. A promise, a future, a life built together. They were married in late November in a small ceremony in Tucson. The town's minister officiated, and Rachel, Tom, Hank, and Miguel stood as witnesses. Clara wore a new dress that Rachel had helped her make, a beautiful creation of cream-colored silk that made her feel like a princess. Cord wore his best suit, his dark hair combed back, and his face clean-shaven. And when Clara walked toward him down the short aisle of the church, the look in his eyes took her breath away. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, but Clara barely heard the words. She was too focused on Cord, on the man she was pledging her life to. When it came time to say their vows, Cord's voice was strong and clear. "I, James Cordell, take you, Clara Thornton, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I promise to stand by your side through good times and bad, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. I promise to build a life with you, a home where we both belong, and to never take for granted the gift of your love." Clara felt tears streaming down her face as she spoke her own vows. "I, Clara Thornton, take you, James Cordell, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you with all my heart, to be your partner in all things, and to support you in your dreams. I promise to pay forward the kindness you showed me when I had nothing, to build a life of compassion and generosity with you, and I promise to choose you every day for the rest of my life." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Cord kissed Clara with such tenderness that she felt it all the way to her soul. They were married, bound together not just by law, but by love and choice and shared dreams. The celebration afterward was simple but joyful. Mrs. Murphy had come in from the way station, and even Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house attended. They had a small feast at a restaurant in Tucson, and everyone toasted the happy couple. Rachel cried happy tears and hugged Clara tightly, welcoming her officially into the family. Tom shook Cord's hand and told him he was a lucky man. And through it all, Clara and Cord could not stop smiling at each other, their hands intertwined, already anticipating the life they would build together. That night, in a room at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, Cord and Clara consummated their marriage. It was Clara's first time, and she was nervous, but Cord was patient and gentle, taking his time to make sure she was comfortable and ready. When they finally came together, it felt like the natural culmination of everything that had been building between them, a physical expression of the emotional and spiritual bond they had forged. Afterward, lying in Cord's arms, Clara felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. This was where she was meant to be, with this man who loved her unconditionally, who saw her for who she truly was and cherished her all the more for it. "I never thought I could be this happy," Clara whispered, her head resting on Cord's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Neither did I," Cord admitted, his fingers running through her hair. "When I found you on that trail bleeding and alone, I had no idea that I was finding the other half of my soul." "Do you believe in fate?" Clara asked. Brought me down that trail at that exact moment, but I am grateful for it every single day." "I am grateful too," Clara said, "for everything. For you finding me, for your kindness, for the life we are building together. I feel like the luckiest woman alive." "The feeling is mutual," Cord said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Now get some sleep, Mrs. Cordell. We have a long ride back to the ranch tomorrow, and a lifetime of adventures ahead of us." Clara smiled at the sound of her new name. Mrs. Cordell. It felt right, like a missing piece clicking into place. She closed her eyes and let herself drift off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that she was loved, that she was home, and that the best was yet to come. The first year of their marriage was a time of adjustment and growth. Clara threw herself into her role as a ranch wife, learning everything she could about managing a household and helping with the ranch work. She developed a reputation among their neighbors for her kindness and competence, and more than once she was called upon to help other families in the area. There was the time she helped deliver a baby when the doctor could not make it in time, drawing on memories of helping her mother's friends back in Texas. There was the time she organized a community effort to help a neighboring ranch after their barn burned down, remembering Cord's words about paying kindness forward. And there was the time she took in a young Apache woman who had been injured and abandoned by her own people for marrying outside the tribe, caring for her until she recovered and helping her reunite with her husband. Cord watched his wife blossom into her role with pride and love. Clara was everything he had hoped for in a partner and more. She was not just competent and hardworking, she was compassionate and wise, with a natural ability to connect with people and understand their needs. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts, and slowly but surely they began to chip away at the debts Cord had accumulated. In the spring of 1879, Clara discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when the doctor in Tucson confirmed it, she felt a mixture of joy and terror. She had lost her own mother to childbirth, and the fear of suffering the same fate haunted her. When she told Cord, his reaction was immediate and overwhelming. He swept her into his arms, tears streaming down his face, and held her as if she was the most precious thing in the world. "We are going to have a baby," he whispered. His voice choked with emotion. "Clara, we are going to be parents." "I am scared," Clara admitted, voicing her deepest fear. "What if something goes wrong? What if I do not survive?" Cord pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his hands framing her face. "Nothing is going to happen to you. I will not let it. We will get the best care possible, and we will be prepared for anything. You are strong, Clara. You have survived so much already. You will survive this too." His certainty helped calm Clara's fears, though they never entirely went away. As her pregnancy progressed, Cord became almost comically protective. He insisted she rest more, take on fewer chores, and avoid anything that might be remotely dangerous. Clara found it both touching and slightly frustrating, but she understood that his protectiveness came from a place of love and fear of losing her. Rachel was thrilled at the prospect of being an aunt, and she shared her own experiences of pregnancy and childbirth with Clara, which helped ease some of her anxiety. By the time Clara's belly began to swell noticeably, she had grown more confident in her ability to bring this child safely into the world. The baby, a boy they named Thomas James Cordell after both his uncle and his father, was born on a cold November night in 1879. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Cord, waiting anxiously outside with Tom and Miguel, feared the worst. But Clara proved as strong as he had always believed her to be, and when the baby's first cry split the air, Cord nearly collapsed with relief. When he was finally allowed into the bedroom, he found Clara propped up against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with a smile that outshone the sun. "Meet your son," she said softly. Cord approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the small face peeking out from the blankets. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and his eyes, though still unfocused, seemed to be looking directly at his father. Cord felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Cord breathed, reaching out to touch one tiny hand. The baby's fingers immediately wrapped around his, and Cord felt tears sting his eyes. "You did it, Clara. You brought our son into the world." "We did it," Clara corrected gently, "all of us together." And it was true. The birth of little Thomas was not just Clara's accomplishment, but the result of the community they had built around them. Rachel had assisted with the birth, drawing on her own experience. Tom had ridden through the night to fetch the doctor from Tucson. Mrs. Murphy had come from the way station to help with the household during Clara's recovery. Even Hank and Miguel had pitched in, taking on extra work to keep the ranch running smoothly. Watching his wife hold their son, surrounded by the people they loved, Cord was struck by how far they had come. Less than 2.5 years ago, Clara had been a stranger bleeding in the desert, and he had been a lonely rancher focused solely on survival. Now they were a family, part of a larger community, building a life that had meaning beyond just getting by. The next few years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. Thomas grew from a tiny infant into a sturdy toddler, full of curiosity and energy. He had his father's amber eyes and his mother's stubborn determination, and he kept Clara and Cord constantly on their toes. The ranch continued to prosper, and in 1881, Cord was finally able to pay off the last of his debts. It was a milestone worth celebrating, and they threw a party for everyone who had helped them along the way. In early 1882, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there was less fear and more excitement. She knew what to expect now, and her first pregnancy and delivery had been successful. When their second child, a daughter named Sarah Rose Cordell, was born in September of that year, it was a much easier birth and Clara recovered quickly. Sarah was different from Thomas in temperament. Where her brother was boisterous and energetic, Sarah was calm and observant, watching the world around her with serious eyes. Cord doted on his daughter, and Clara often teased him about being wrapped around Sarah's tiny finger. With 2 young children and a growing ranch, life was busy but fulfilling. Clara had never been happier. She had found not just love, but a purpose, a place where she truly belonged. And every day she thanked whatever divine providence had brought Cord down that trail at the exact moment she needed him most. One evening in 1883, as they sat on the porch watching Thomas chase fireflies while Sarah slept in Clara's arms, Cord turned to his wife with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had not come along that day?" he asked. Clara considered the question seriously. "I probably would have died," she said bluntly. "Or if someone else had found me, they might not have been as kind as you were. I might have ended up in a very different situation." "I hate thinking about that," Cord admitted. "The thought of you suffering or worse. But that is not what happened, Clara interrupted gently. What happened was that you found me. You helped me without asking for anything in return, and we built this beautiful life together. That is what matters. I still think I got the better end of that bargain, Cord said with a smile. You have given me everything I ever wanted, a true partner, a family, a home filled with love and laughter. All I gave you was a ride to the ranch and a job. You gave me far more than that, Clara said firmly. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. You showed me what it means to love and be loved unconditionally, and you taught me the most important lesson of all, that kindness has the power to change lives. Cord reached over and took her free hand, intertwining their fingers. Pay it forward with your heart, he quoted, remembering the words he had spoken so long ago. Exactly, Clara said, and we have been doing that together every day since, helping our neighbors, building our community, raising our children to understand the importance of compassion and generosity. That is your legacy, Cord. Not just this ranch, but the ripple effect of kindness that started with one man helping a stranger. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the desert sky turn from orange to purple to deep blue. Thomas eventually tired of chasing fireflies and came to sit on the porch steps, leaning against his father's leg. Clara looked at her family, at the life they had built from nothing, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Over the following years, the Cordell Ranch became a landmark in the area, known not just for its quality cattle, but for the hospitality and generosity of its owners. Clara and Cord helped countless people over the years, travelers who needed a place to stay, neighbors who fell on hard times, young couples just starting out who needed advice and support. Thomas grew into a serious, responsible young man who loved the ranch and dreamed of one day running it himself. Sarah became a spirited girl with a talent for horses and a compassionate heart that reminded Clara of her father. In 1886, Clara gave birth to their third child, another boy they named William Henry Cordell, who turned out to be a perfect blend of his older siblings' personalities. The children grew up hearing the story of how their parents met, of their mother's courage and their father's kindness. Clara and Cord made sure their children understood that their family's prosperity was built not just on hard work, but on the fundamental principle of helping others. We have so much, Clara would tell them. Not just material things, but love and security and opportunity. And when you have been given much, you have a responsibility to give back. The children took these lessons to heart. Even as youngsters, they were quick to help neighbors, to share what they had, and to show compassion to those less fortunate. It was a point of pride for both Clara and Cord to see their values reflected in their children. In 1890, Rachel and Tom's oldest son, Matthew, married a young woman from Tucson, and the wedding became a major celebration for the entire community. Clara watched as her nephew stood at the altar, promising to love and cherish his bride, and was transported back to her own wedding day 14 years earlier. So much had changed since then, and yet the core of what mattered remained the same: love, commitment, and the choice to build a life together. As the years passed, Clara and Cord grew older but not apart. If anything, their love deepened with time, seasoned by shared experiences and weathered storms. They had faced droughts and floods, disease and injury, financial setbacks and personal losses. Through it all, they had remained steadfast partners, supporting each other and facing challenges as a team. In 1895, on the anniversary of the day they met, Cord took Clara back to the place where he had first found her. The desert looked much the same as it had 18 years earlier, stark and beautiful in its harshness. They stood together on the spot where Clara had lain bleeding, where her life had hung in the balance, and marveled at how much had changed. I was so scared that day, Clara said, her hand in Cord's. I thought I was going to die alone in the desert, that all my father's hopes for me would die with me. And instead you found a new life, Cord said, one that I hope has brought you happiness. Clara turned to face her husband, reaching up to touch his face. There was gray in his hair now and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun, but to her he was as handsome as the day they met. "Happiness does not begin to describe it," she said. "You gave me everything, Cord. A home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love and respect and partnership. You gave me a life worth living." "We gave each other that," Cord corrected, pulling her close. "That day, when I asked you to pay me forward with your heart, I had no idea what I was really asking for. I thought I was just talking about kindness to strangers, but what you gave me was so much more. You gave me your whole heart, Clara, and I have treasured it every day since." They kissed there in the desert. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting and beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, Clara smiled up at her husband. "Should we head home?" she asked. "The children will wonder where we have gone." "In a minute," Cord said. "I just want to stand here with you a little longer, remembering how it all began." So they stood together, hand in hand, as the sun moved across the sky and the desert stretched out around them. And Clara thought about the words that had changed her life. "Then pay me forward with your heart." She had done that, had given her heart freely to Cord and to their children, and to everyone who crossed their path needing help. And in return, she had received more love and happiness than she had ever dreamed possible. The years continued to pass, bringing more changes and challenges. In 1898, Thomas married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, expanding both their family and their land holdings. In 1900, Sarah met a young lawyer from Tucson at a community dance and fell head over heels in love. Clara saw in Sarah's eyes the same wonder and excitement she had felt when falling for Cord and gave her blessing gladly. William, their youngest, showed an interest in medicine, inspired by the many times he had watched his mother care for sick or injured neighbors. With Clara and Cord's encouragement and support, he went to medical school in San Francisco, becoming the first Cordell to pursue higher education. It was a source of immense pride for both parents, proof that the life they had built could give their children opportunities they themselves had never had. As the new century dawned, Clara and Cord found themselves in their middle years, surrounded by grandchildren, and still actively involved in running the ranch. They had expanded the operation significantly over the years, but they never lost sight of what mattered most: family, community, and the principle of paying kindness forward. One evening in 1902, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Cord turned to Clara with a serious expression. "I have been thinking," he said, "about legacy, about what we leave behind when we are gone." Clara looked at him concerned. "Are you feeling all right? This sounds rather morbid." Cord smiled. "I am fine, but we are not young anymore, Clara. We are both in our 50s now. I just want to make sure that when we are gone, the values we have tried to live by continue on." "Our children understand those values," Clara assured him. "We have raised them right." "I know," Cord agreed, "but I want to do something more formal. I want to establish a fund, maybe through the church or the town, specifically to help people who find themselves in desperate circumstances. People like you were when I found you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Even after all these years, Cord's capacity for compassion still moved her. "That is a beautiful idea. We could call it the Pay It Forward Fund," Cord continued, warming to the idea. "It could provide assistance to travelers who have been robbed, families who have lost everything to fire or flood, young people trying to get an education but lacking the means. We could start it with some of our savings and encourage others in the community to contribute as well." Clara reached over and took his hand. "You have such a good heart, Cordell. It is one of the many reasons I love you." "So you think it is a good idea?" Cord asked. "I think it is a wonderful idea," Clara said, "and I would be honored to help you make it happen." Over the next few months, Clara and Cord worked with the minister in Tucson and several community leaders to establish the fund. They contributed a significant portion of their savings, and others in the community quickly followed suit. The Pay It Forward Fund officially launched in the spring of 1903, and its first recipient was a young widow whose husband had died in a mining accident, leaving her with 3 small children and no means of support. The fund provided her with enough money to get training as a seamstress and start her own business, allowing her to support her family with dignity. Over the years, the fund helped dozens of people, each one a testament to Clara and Cord's belief that kindness could change lives. And each recipient was encouraged to pay that kindness forward when they were able, creating a ripple effect that spread far beyond what two people could accomplish alone. In 1905, Clara and Cord celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary surrounded by their children's spouses, and a growing brood of grandchildren. It was a joyous occasion, filled with laughter and love and storytelling. Thomas toasted his parents, speaking eloquently about the example they had set and the values they had instilled. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that true wealth is not measured in dollars or acres, but in the lives we touch and the love we share. May we all strive to live up to their example." Clara felt Cord's hand squeeze hers under the table, and she looked at her husband, seeing the emotion shining in his eyes. They had built a good life together, a life that would continue through their children and grandchildren and all the people they had helped along the way. That night, lying in bed with Cord's arm around her, Clara thought back to that day in the desert so many years ago. She had been so afraid, so certain that her life was over. But instead, it had just been beginning. That moment of desperation had led her to the greatest love of her life, to a family and a home and a purpose that gave her days meaning. "What are you thinking about?" Miss Cord asked sleepily, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "About how much I love you," Clara said simply. "About how grateful I am for every day we have had together." "Me too," Cord murmured, "every single day." They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that they had built something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. The years continued their steady march forward. In 1908, William completed his medical training and returned to Arizona, opening a practice in Tucson. He married a teacher from the East, a smart, capable woman who shared his commitment to service. Together, they provided medical care to people who often could not afford it, continuing the family tradition of helping those in need. Sarah and her husband, the lawyer, had 4 children and a beautiful home in Tucson. But they frequently visited the ranch, and Sarah never lost her love for horses or her connection to the land where she grew up. Thomas took over more and more of the day-to-day management of the ranch as Cord and Clara grew older, though both remained actively involved in decision-making and in mentoring the younger generation. In 1910, Clara and Cord celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. It was a quieter affair than their 27th, just family and close friends, but no less meaningful. They sat together on the porch that evening, watching the stars come out, and reflected on their lives. 30 years, Clara marveled. It seems like both a lifetime and no time at all. "I know what you mean," Cord said. "Some days, I still see you as that young woman I found in the desert, brave and stubborn and determined to survive. Other days, I look at you and see every year we have lived together, every challenge we have overcome, every joy we have shared." "We have had a good life, have we not?" Clara asked. "The best," Cord confirmed. "I could not have asked for more." "What has made you happiest?" Clara asked curiously. "If you had to choose one thing about our life together." Cord thought for a long moment. "That is hard to narrow down," he admitted. "But if I had to choose, I would say it is the legacy we have built. Not just the ranch, though I am proud of that, but the family we have raised, the people we have helped, the values we have passed on. When I am gone, I will leave this world a little better than I found it, and that is because of you, Clara, because you showed me that kindness and compassion are not weaknesses but strengths." Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. "You had that in you all along, Cord. You just needed the right person to share it with." "Maybe," Cord allowed, "but you brought it out in me. You made me want to be better, to do better. And for that, I will be eternally grateful." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands and watching the night sky. Clara thought about all the people their fund had helped over the years, about the letters they received from recipients who had gone on to build new lives for themselves. She thought about their children and grandchildren, all of them kind and hard-working and committed to making the world better. And she thought about Cord, her partner in all things, the man who had saved her life and then spent every day since making that life worth living. "I love you," she said simply, "today, tomorrow, and always." "And I love you," Cord replied, "more than words can say." As they grew older, Clara and Cord spent more time with their grandchildren, telling them stories about the old days and teaching them the skills they would need to carry on the family legacy. They watched with pride as the oldest grandchildren grew into young adults, each of them displaying the values that Clara and Cord had worked so hard to instill. In 1914, as the world around them grew increasingly complex with talk of war in Europe and changes sweeping across America, Clara and Cord remained focused on what mattered most: family, community, and treating others with kindness and respect. They were in their 60s now, slowed by age but not defeated by it. They still worked on the ranch when they could, still helped neighbors in need, and still welcomed anyone who came to their door seeking assistance. One afternoon in late summer, Clara was working in her garden when she heard the sound of a horse approaching. She looked up to see a young woman, dusty from travel, riding into the yard. The woman looked exhausted and scared, and something about her expression reminded Clara of herself so many years ago. Clara stood and wiped her hands on her apron, walking over to greet the visitor. "Can I help you?" The young woman dismounted, her movements stiff and painful. "I am sorry to intrude," she said, her voice shaking. "I am looking for James Cordell. I was told he might be able to help me." "I am his wife, Clara," Clara said gently. "What has happened?" The young woman's composure crumbled, and she began to cry. "I was traveling with my brother to California," she sobbed. "We were robbed 3 days ago. They took everything, even shot my brother. He is at the doctor's in Tucson, and I do not know if he will survive. The doctor says the care he needs will cost more than I can pay, and I have no one else to turn to." Clara felt as if she was looking into a mirror that reflected her own past, and called for Cord, who came in from the barn with Thomas. When they heard the story, both men immediately sprang into action. Cord went to the lockbox where they kept emergency funds and pulled out enough money to cover the doctor's bills and more besides. Thomas offered to ride into Tucson to ensure the doctor had everything he needed to care for the young man. "I cannot accept this," the young woman protested, even as hope bloomed in her eyes. "I have no way to pay you back." Clara and Cord exchanged a look, and then Clara smiled, taking the young woman's hand. "You do not need to pay us back," she said gently, "but someday, when you are able, pay it forward. Help someone else who is in need. That is all we ask." The young woman stared at them, tears streaming down her face. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Clara thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, about the scared young woman she had been and the life she had built. "Because someone once did it for me," she said simply, "and it changed everything." As Thomas rode off to Tucson with the money and assurances that the young woman's brother would receive the best care possible, Clara brought their guest inside and settled her in a comfortable chair with hot food and cold water. The young woman, whose name was Elizabeth, told them her story between bites of stew, and Clara and Cord listened with the patience born of years of helping others. Later that evening, after Elizabeth had been settled in the guest room for the night, Clara and Cord sat together on their porch, watching the familiar sight of the sun setting over the desert. "It is strange," Clara said thoughtfully. "Seeing her today was like looking at a ghost of myself. So frightened, so desperate, so convinced that the world held nothing but cruelty." "And now?" Cord prompted. "Now I know better," Clara said. "The world holds both cruelty and kindness, suffering and joy, but we get to choose which one we add to. Every day, with every action, we choose what kind of world we want to live in." Cord pulled her close, and Clara rested her head on his shoulder. You are a wise woman, Clara Cordell. I learned from the best, Clara replied, smiling up at him. They sat there as the stars came out. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built a life based on love and compassion. Around them, the ranch they had built hummed with life. Cattle lowing in the distance, horses whinnying in the corral, the sound of their grandchildren playing before bedtime. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had ridden down a different trail that day? Clara asked, a question she had pondered many times over the years. Every once in a while, Cord admitted. But then I think about what we have built together, about the life we have shared, and I cannot imagine any other path. I was meant to find you that day, Clara. I am sure of it. I am sure of it too, Clara said. You saved my life, Cord, in more ways than one. We saved each other, Cord corrected. You gave me a reason to be the man I always wanted to be. You gave me a family, a purpose, a love that has sustained me through everything. If I saved you that day in the desert, then you have saved me every day since. Clara turned and kissed him, a kiss full of 30 years of love and partnership and shared dreams. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. Come on, Cord said, standing and offering Clara his hand. Let us go inside. We have another day of work ahead of us tomorrow. Another day of life, Clara corrected, taking his hand and letting him pull her to her feet. Another day of building the legacy we will leave behind. They walked into the house together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Behind them, the desert stretched out under the stars, beautiful and harsh and full of possibilities. It was the same desert where Clara had nearly died 37 years ago, the same desert where her life had truly begun. And it would remain there long after they were gone, a silent witness to the power of one act of kindness to change the course of two lives forever. In the years that followed, Clara and Cord continued to help people through their fund and through personal action. Elizabeth's brother recovered, and the siblings eventually made it to California. But they never forgot the Cordells, and years later they established a similar fund in San Francisco, helping other travelers and people in need. It was just one example of the ripple effect Clara and Cord had created, but it filled them with profound satisfaction to know that their actions had inspired others to pay kindness forward. As Clara and Cord entered their 70s, they gradually stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, though they remained active in the community and in their grandchildren's lives. They had lived to see their children established in successful careers and happy marriages, and their grandchildren growing into responsible, compassionate adults. It was more than they had ever dared hope for. On a warm spring day in 1920, Clara and Cord celebrated their 44th wedding anniversary. The entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration that spanned 3 generations. There were toasts and speeches, laughter and tears, and a general sense of gratitude for the life that Clara and Cord had built together. As the sun began to set and the party wound down, Clara and Cord slipped away to their favorite spot on the porch. They sat in the rocking chairs they had occupied for so many years, holding hands and watching the desert sky turn shades of orange and purple. 44 years, Clara marveled. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday that you found me bleeding in the desert. And sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, Cord agreed. We were so young then. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. Would you change anything? Clara asked. If you could go back and do it all again, would you do anything differently? Cord considered the question seriously. No, he finally said. Every challenge we faced, every mistake we made, every triumph and heartbreak brought us to where we are today. I would not change a moment of it. Neither would I, Clara said softly. You gave me everything I ever wanted, Cord. A home, a family, a love that has sustained me through every trial. You taught me what it means to live with an open heart, to give freely without expecting anything in return. You showed me that kindness is not a weakness, but the greatest strength of all. You taught me those things too, Cord said. We learned them together. They sat in peaceful silence, surrounded by the sounds of their family inside the house. Grandchildren laughing, their children talking in low voices, the clink of dishes being washed. It was the sound of a life well lived, of a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. "I love you, Clara Cordell," Cord said, lifting her hand to his lips and pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Today, tomorrow, and always." "And I love you, James Cordell," Clara replied, "with my whole heart, for all eternity." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Clara thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the scared young woman she had been, alone and injured in the desert, certain that her life was over. She thought about the cowboy who had stopped to help her, asking for nothing but kindness in return. She thought about the love they had built, the family they had created, and the countless lives they had touched. She thought about Cord's words from so long ago, "Then pay me forward with your heart." She had done that, had given her heart freely and completely to him and to everyone who crossed their path. And in return she had received more than she ever could have imagined, a life filled with purpose and meaning, a love that had only grown stronger with time, and the satisfaction of knowing that they had made the world a little bit better. As Clara and Cord sat together on their porch, watching the night sky deepen and the stars multiply overhead, they knew that they had kept the promise they made to each other all those years ago. They had loved each other, honored each other, and built a life together based on the simple but profound principle that kindness has the power to change the world. For the ranch they built, or the money for the ranch they built, or the money they made, but for the lives they touched and the legacy of compassion they left behind. It was a legacy that would endure long after they were gone, a testament to the power of two people who chose love over fear, generosity over selfishness, and hope over despair. That night, as Clara drifted off to sleep in Cord's arms, she whispered one last prayer of gratitude for the life they had shared. And Cord, holding her close, echoed that gratitude in his own heart, knowing that he had been blessed beyond measure by the woman who had come into his life as a stranger and stayed as his partner, his love, and his greatest joy. Their story, born from an act of kindness in the Arizona desert in 1877, would inspire generations to come, reminding people that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simplest choice: to help someone in need, expecting nothing in return except the hope that they will pay that kindness forward with their heart. And so Clara and Cord Cordell lived out their days surrounded by love, their legacy secured not in wealth or possessions, but in the countless lives they had touched, the values they had passed on to their children and grandchildren, and the enduring power of a love built on compassion, respect, and the unwavering belief that kindness can change the world. When Cord passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1925 at the age of 74, surrounded by his family, Clara held his hand and whispered words of love and gratitude. She mourned his loss deeply, but she also celebrated the incredible life they had built together and the love that had sustained them for nearly 48 years. Clara lived for 3 more years after Cord's death, remaining active in the community and continuing to help others through the Pay It Forward fund they had established. She was a beloved figure, known for her wisdom, her kindness, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of people. When she passed away quietly in her sleep in 1928 at the age of 73, the entire community mourned the loss of a woman who had touched so many lives. Clara and Cord were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together under the vast Arizona sky they had both loved. Their graves were marked with simple headstones that bore their names, their dates, and a single inscription chosen by their children. They paid it forward with their hearts. The ranch continued under Thomas's management, and the Pay It Forward fund grew stronger with each passing year, helping hundreds of people and inspiring similar initiatives across the territory. The story of Clara and Cord became legend in the community, a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes come from the simplest acts of kindness. And on quiet evenings when the desert wind whispered through the scrub and the stars shone bright overhead, People would sometimes say they could feel the presence of Clara and Cord Cordell, watching over the land they loved and the people they had dedicated their lives to helping. It was a fitting legacy for two people who had proven that love, kindness, and compassion can create ripples that extend far beyond a single lifetime, touching hearts and changing lives for generations to come. Their story ended where it began, in the harsh but beautiful landscape of Arizona Territory, a testament to the enduring power of one cowboy who stopped to help a stranger and one woman who repaid his kindness with her whole heart, building a love that would never